Hello, all my art-loving people out there. I have a very exciting video for you today because I'm going to show you how to simplify your portraits in two different ways. So just to have something to compare with, I started out doing a very realistic version of the portrait. I started with a photograph that had a lot of contrast in it. That's exactly what I was looking for, really bright lights, really dark darks, and I thought the photograph I found here on Pixabay was perfect for this experiment. I honestly didn't think doing this painting realistically would take as long as it did, but I made a couple of, not mistakes so much, but I was being very cautious by layering very slowly and with not very much pigment. So you could probably save yourself a lot of time if you want to do a realistic portrait by going in with a heavier load of pigment right from the beginning. But in realistic portraits, you do want to water the entire face because all the skin is pretty smooth. So having hard edges where water stops is not what you want in a realistic portrait. We are going to do the first one realistic, like I've already mentioned, and then I'll show you the two ways to simplify it. I honestly thought I would get frustrated doing this portrait 3 different times, but I didn't because I learned something new every single time I did it, and it was just as fascinating the third time, even more fun the third time than it was any of the other times. I will eventually have this up on my Patreon site as a real-time tutorial. Probably not this year. This year is way busy for me, but probably starting in January, all those tutorials will start to become live on my Patreon site, so you can check that out if you're interested. No big deal if you're not. Just being here on YouTube makes me quite happy. Reading your comments, seeing your likes, and just knowing that people are watching. Thank you very much for that. Alright, getting back to the painting, you can see that I am laying in the fur in the hat, and I already did the fur coat area. Just laying in blobs because it is fur. I wasn't trying to make it look furry. I wasn't trying to keep the, individual little fur highlights. I just wanted clumps, and that's how I laid it in. And you can see I'm laying in some various parts of that hat for the hair to stick out and putting in a background. I didn't want that stark white background. And that background's a little more gray than it's showing on screen. But now I felt like I needed some definition, so I'm putting in the eyes, even though they are too light in value, just kind of getting a map in there. I'm really good about like mapping things out for myself because it just helps me kind of picture the finished painting as a whole. So even though the values are too light, it's just, okay, this is where this is going to be, this is where that's going to be, great, and then I can move on. And now you can see I'm just laying in some more in the face, but when I did that I had to soften off the edges because, again, everything in the face has to have soft edges. So I did that a little bit, and now I'm laying in the lips. The lips are just something really easy you can do if you're feeling a little bit about the face. Go to the lips. I laid in that really dark color and let it bleed into the wet of the pink lips, and that was really cool because it created the exact correct fingering lines for lips, but it doesn't do that every time, so you can't count on that. I will have to go back and refine the lips, of course, a lot, and then I'm laying in kind of like an outline of that shadow and then trying to deepen it and soften it. Everything is softening off. If you guys don't know how to soften off things, that is something you should definitely work on. And again, I'm just going back in and deepening colors, deepening shadows, laying in more of the groundwork for the face and the hair and the ears. And something that you can probably tell is very obvious is how many layers I end up doing. You can see right there I am wetting the entire face again because there's more work I need to do. So if you do what I suggest in the very beginning and go in with those deeper, darker values right from the beginning, you will save a lot of these layering steps. So don't be afraid to go dark. The human eye craves contrast. It needs contrast to tell what it's looking at. So put some contrast in and do it a little quicker than I do it in this portrait. That's something that I get better and better at as I go through the next 2 portraits in slightly different styles. So you'll see that, and I think that'll be really helpful for you to look at in the future. However, since out of the 3 portraits, this is the only one that is truly somewhat realistic, I love every step of it because it got me to the end product, which I am really happy with. So if I had to do it in all of these different layers, so be it. I do think you could do it more quickly by going in darker quicker, as I've already mentioned, but this worked for me and I really enjoy the outcome. But I do go through a lot of rewetting, softening off, darkening values, laying in more color, softening off some more, darkening values, and it is a bit of a process. So this one took a very long time, and if you want to shorten the time that it takes you to do a portrait, definitely stay tuned for the next two because they are so much more quick than this one. Also, hair should be done in clumps, not little individual strands, but I guess I was impatient with the hair in this one, and I do notice a lot of watercolor artists will lay in the groundwork of hair and then come in with colored pencil to finish it, but I did not want to introduce colored pencil to this painting, and so I could do things a little differently with the hair. I did make this particular model a little bit more brown haired than blonde because I think blonde is a more difficult color for me to paint with the colors that I have in this Himimiya set. And something that I should probably practice some more is painting blonde hair, but I just didn't feel like the colors I had were quite right for that. So I did make her more brown haired. I do like how the hair turned out in the end because I do go in and add more clumps of hair rather than individual strands, and I come in the end with some bleed proof white and add some little flyaway strands, which definitely help hair look more realistic, is grabbing those flyaway strands that we all have, especially us curly haired people, right? It is definitely these tiny, more specific details that really bring a portrait to life, such as the eyebrows, the eyes, the eyelashes, the eyeliners, the lips, the shadows in the lips, the highlight in the lips, the highlights on the nose, all of that I will start to lay in here in a minute. And you'll see even on the portraits that I do following this one that take far, far less time, I do still need to do very realistic eyes, eyebrows, and lips to make it look like I want it to look like. So I'm going to let you watch the rest of this process in peace, but I'll be back with you quite shortly actually because we are almost finished with this one. It's at this point that I am considering her mostly finished, so I am taking bleed proof white, mixing it sometimes with the hair color, sometimes just straight out of the jar, and it's very dried up, but just mix it with a little water, putting on some of those highlights to grab some light back into the subject. And then this is where I mention those hair strands. Very good. You can either put it on straight and then rub your finger over it. That will dilute the color, but you can see over on the right I am diluting it with some of the hair color in the palette and then putting it on my painting. And one thing I noticed is that my neckline was a little bit crooked, and necks are not wavy, so I do go in and fix that. Then I soften off the edge. I have to tilt it upside down to do that correctly, but that helped a bunch. And there's the softening so that it doesn't look very weird. Best part, taking the tape off, and then I start the next one, which is stylized version. This is so much fun. I take the same tape that I had on the previous painting, put it on this one, and just start going in. My goal was to use a flat brush and one stroke. This is on dry paper. So much fun after just finishing the realistic one to now know where all the shadows, where are the highlights, all of that should be, and challenge yourself to do one stroke. And what I mean by that is lay down the paint and don't touch it. So sometimes, yes, you may have to darken an area, but you're not going in, you're not softening edges, you're not doing anything like that. You are trying to get the right value the first time. It doesn't always work, that's okay, but it's a fun challenge. You can see I'm laying in the lips still with a flat brush, but I do have to switch to the round brush once in a while. There are times you just need a smaller brush or a brush with a small fine point. So it is okay to switch brushes, but you can see this one is drastically different. At the same time though, at the end, you can tell that it is used from the same model. So how cool is that? This one took 30 minutes. That other one was over 2.5 hours. So that tells you something right there. This with the fur, I tried to do a much more curly-Q, fun look, and I kind of messed up the hair and had to go fix that, but that's okay. We make mistakes, have to fix them, but you can see the curly-Qs I'm doing in the hat. That was so much fun. That's a mixture of that granulating black, dioxazine violet, and Prussian blue. Just a beautiful color mixture. So yeah, she looks a little demonic without her eyes in there, but I'll get the eyes in there eventually and you'll see. But so quick, so easy. It gets the highlights, it gets the shadows. You know this is a portrait, you know this is a person, and you know this is fun. So it hardly takes any time at all to get the main painting in, but then when you have to go in and do the realistic parts, the eyes, the mouth, the highlights, if you want highlights, that takes a little bit of time. So that actually took the longest, but it turns out really nicely, and I'm quite happy with this whole process. It was really, really fun. So do a realistic one and then come do a stylized one because you are going to have a blast. So I'm just finishing up some very last minute details here and taking the tape off, and this is how they end up and how they compare to each other. The stylized version, ta-da, and here is the realistic version. It's so cool because they're the same but completely different. I really love them both. I like the realistic version a lot for many reasons, and I like the stylized version for other reasons. So after I did the super one stroke with the flat brush simple method in class at the college class that I teach called Intermediate Watercolor, we did a happy medium between the two because I really loved the realistic version, really kind of liked the one stroke version, but I thought if we could marry the two, we'd be set. So let's take a look at that because I didn't get that on camera, but I will explain exactly how to do this third one, which is my favorite. Okay, are you ready for it? Are you ready for it? Here's the third one. Not that one, this one. So we have super realistic. Well, not super realistic. I did take some liberties with the highlights. I made them even brighter and whatnot. Then we have super blocky, very fun one stroke type of painting, and somewhere in the middle. So with this one, I wanted to make her skin tone a little bit more vibrant. So definitely added more of the red, so the skin tone is leaning way orange, which I think is quite pretty. And it makes me look back at this one and think, yeah, I could actually add more of this beautiful deep color kind of in the cheek area over here too, and maybe up in her forehead a little more. So there's probably things I could still change. And then on this one, I did wet the whole face first so that when I laid down my one strokes of color, they bled out into more of a soft edge, just like you would do with a realistic one. So this one, just to remind you, was done on dry paper, so no blending, hard edges, really cool look though. So wetting the face makes it just a little bit softer. And then I would take my dry brush, so rinse the brush out, pat it on paper towel to get some of the moisture out, and then kind of blend that edge because you will get fingering when it bleeds out on its own, and I didn't really want that in the portrait. So just grabbed that edge, blended that out, smoothed that out, and then I did try salt on the cowl, if that's what you call it, in the hat. Salt really did not work though. I had very wet paint, but the paper surface was dry, and so I think in order for the salt to work with this particular mixture of paint, the paper would have needed to be wet, and then I would have put this really juicy paint on top of it. Then we would have seen some salt effects. A couple of my students did have the salt work in these areas, and that was kind of neat. You can see also when I tried to get some of the salt off, it scratched the paper and made some scratch lines. And I'm not upset about it. I think it looks okay. I did think about covering the face and splattering with like a light version of the bleed proof white mixed with maybe a little purple or something, but I didn't. I also chose not to do the hair strands in this painting. So you can see I have these really cool hair strands, and I do love them. And I put that in afterwards with bleed proof white mixed with some color. But there's something about this particular painting, I just liked it as is. And yes, maybe it could still add something to the painting, but I like it. I didn't want to touch it anymore. The hair was just a different kind of style that I wanted to keep. So really the only difference between this one and this one was the soft edges. I still tried to do just the one stroke and leave it, but of course, like I mentioned, I did the blending and it was on wet paper, so it really just looks softer. I like it better than this one, but it is a completely different look. And then of course on all three of them, I did go ahead and do the eyes and the mouth realistically. I think that just adds something kind of cool to it. And just as a quick aside, because I know some of you are following my Use It Up update, I used the Himimiya watercolors for all three of these portraits. Plus, I think I did 2 of these with Himimiya watercolors. Nope, just one with Himimiya. The one I painted with you guys together on the channel was done with the P.H. Martin's Hydrus watercolors. So one of these Himimiya, 3 of these I've painted with it, and various other times, like this painting was done with the Himimiya watercolors. Anyway, I want to show you what they look like. So the black is almost completely gone. So sad. I love that black. It's a very highly granulating black, and it is so cool when you mix other colors with it. The white's getting down there. Other than that, the ultramarine blue and the browns are pretty low. I have a ton of paint though in the other colors. And this one here is I would guess that it's a Prussian blue, something like that. So it's really deep in there too. I love that color. It's also seems to be a highly granulating color in this palette. So very interesting. The journey continues. How long will it take to use this up, and how many paintings will it take? And I think I better find some paintings that use Viridian and some of these yellows, maybe even like this rose color, because they're not getting used up very well. And I can end up with yellow at the very end of this experiment, but I prefer not to end up with just a bunch of yellow. But I was thinking if I did, I could do like line and ink kind of thing, except it would be like ink and watercolor kind of thing. So it'll be okay. So that's an update on that. And it's so fun to have 3 different kinds of portraits in this sketchbook. Speaking of Hanamule 100% cotton sketchbook, I had no problems with it at all, other than I was being kind of fast. Where was it? I thought it was on this. Oh no, it was on this. This is the Etcher 50% cotton paper. I was pulling the tape off and it rips really, really easily, so be careful with that. But no problems on this paper. Really enjoyed using it so far. Alright guys, I really hope that you found that useful. I hope that you learned something. I hope that it inspired you to go out and try a portrait, try a couple different styles, and see what really resonates with you. I will see you guys in the next video. Bye for now. I have a very exciting video for you today because... Did I say exciting weird? I think I said exciting weird. We're going to start over. Can you even see her with the... If I get over there where it's darker? She's so cute. That is Chica. Got your toy, Jack? Got your pig? You got your pig? You're so tired. You're so tired.